Okay.
Just to say that we have. What time is it?
Lunch is in 15 minutes.
Okay. I thought 12.
You have lunch in 15 minutes?
50, 50.
Ah, 50. Okay. Well, I think we have time to speak about some things then. What were we saying? I get lost very easily.
Only fans.
I see.
I'm spaced out.
I see. But no. So yes, what you were saying, I don't know. Oops, sorry. My video went. Okay. So the thing about letting students be the teachers is always a good idea, especially when it's about things they enjoy, right? And then connecting the things you want them to learn to the things they want to talk about is a very good way to do things. But I guess that's a thing you're very familiarized with, at least in theory, right? And you're probably trying to find ways to make that work. So yeah, I'm happy to know you're trying stuff like that. It's the kind of thing I've always wanted to do.
But a question that maybe concern more your studies. Is it what psychologically, where does it come from, the need of cooperating?
The need to cooperate.
Yeah.
Well, that's almost more biological.
No. And especially why now it seems that we are missing out the text. That was the full like.
Oh, why it's more difficult to cooperate now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just think really it has to do with education and how societies are evolving, right? They're becoming more individualistic constantly, and you have to think about yourself, and you're always in a constant competition with everyone else because there's very limited opportunities and resources, and you have to be the one that gets it because it's either you or other people, right? So if you're always in a position where you have to choose between you getting something or someone else getting the thing you wanted, you have to compete constantly, right? So that's something that happens a lot in society. And in schools, I mean, I don't know in Denmark, but in Spain, it still works like that. You still get graded, and the students with the best grades access the best universities and get into masters and get scholarships. And it's always a competition. So of course, it's very difficult to learn how to cooperate if everything around you tells you, no, you have to compete. So it's going against the flow in a way, right? Because your whole context is telling you to do otherwise. But at the same time, cooperation is very, very useful, especially nowadays, right? Everyone works in teams, and you have to figure out solutions to things with other people and work with other people constantly. But you also have to compete, right? And the thing they give the most importance to is competition. So I guess that's why it's very difficult to collaborate, because we're expected to know how to collaborate, but we're never taught. Like, you never do actual collaboration in school. Like, seriously, you know, you may do a little bit here. They may say at some point, okay, break into groups and do this, and that's it. But you never learned how to actually collaborate, because apparently it's not important, and you should know how to do it, even though it's not taught. That's my take on that that issue. I don't know if you agree or you disagree with that, but that's kind of how I see it. But yeah. So we can talk maybe about rules, maybe when doing cooperative learning, right? When working as groups. So this is also very connected to the thing we said about self-evaluation after cooperative sessions. You can use specifically after the first sessions, you can use that self-evaluation to say, okay, well, what rules do you guys think we would need to work better as a group? And you can also do that yourselves in your group, right? If you ever think some aspects need a rule, so to speak, to work better, you can also establish a rule. But that works very well with kids again, right? If you just came to class one day with a list of rules and gave them the rules and say, okay, these are the rules to work together as a group, what do you think would happen? Right? They wouldn't be too happy, right? But yeah, exactly. But if you give them the chance to design the rules, and you said yourself, right? kids are surprisingly mature when they have to evaluate how they worked together, and they can find things that didn't work, and they can find ways to make that better. So if you ask them to elaborate a set of rules to make things better, they will probably come out with at least some pretty good rules to make things go better. And they made those rules. So it's going to be so much more important to them to actually follow them, right? Because they made them. That's a very different way to think about it in a certain way. And I think it's very useful. Have you tried this at any time? And what do you think about it?
When I tried it, it was like not in a school setting, but it was like a non-formal learning way. And I noticed that kids are really not used to that.
Oh yeah,
they were like, yeah, very foreign to the concept of creating their own rules. But yeah.
Did they try at least and come up with something good?
I think something they came up with, it's some time ago. It was like about respecting each other's opinion, something like this. And then I kind of proposed then some things that they could, because it was also an intercultural environment. But it was noticeable that they weren't used to it.
Okay, no, that's totally understandable. As with many things we can talk about, right? And when I go to the NS, I will probably do more courses for you guys, if you're interested, that is. There's many of these things we talk about that will surprise kids, right? They won't be used to this because you'll be the first ones that do something like this that they've ever met. So at the beginning, of course, it's difficult for them. They're just lost. And that's a bit of a complicated moment for you guys as well, because you might think, oh, this isn't working, I should just do something else, right? Because you just see them not understanding what's going on. So even though it kind of feels weird, it's important that you try for a longer period of time, right? So you let them get accustomed to what you're trying. You let them understand how it works, because of course, if you quit after trying once because they didn't really understand how that worked, well, it's never going to work, right? And it's a very difficult thing. I get it, because even for me, with my students, which are in third year of university, right? This happens. This year, we tried a new way of doing a specific thing. And for the first few months, they were completely lost and didn't know, because it was different from what they were used to doing, right? So that was also a bit extreme. I had trouble understanding what is taking them months to understand about just transforming information and making it their own, right? I was doing some sort of transformative approach to learning some things. And it was very frustrating. And I thought about just, okay, no, we're not doing this anymore. But by the end of the year, they all actually learned, and they said, okay, well, this was actually much better than I thought, but it was very scary at the beginning, or I didn't get it at the beginning, right? So big changes, which I think is what we all here want to achieve, come with periods of very big uncertainty, right? And that can be stressful, it can be very uncomfortable, but it's actually important to say, okay, we still have to try, right? We have to go through those periods of uncertainty so we can actually change something. Because if we give up when uncertainty and discomfort grows, well, we're never actually going to change anything, right? Because we just stop before we actually change. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So you've all had, like, you've been telling me, no? Some of you have had some of these ideas, have tried this, but maybe you haven't tried enough, you know, and it's normal, right? But I want to encourage you to, okay, maybe you should not go further, like do a lot more, but keep trying, right? Keep trying with the same students to see if they start to slowly understand what you want to change, what you want to make them do. And they probably will, because kids are surprisingly capable, right? Sometimes it seems like they're not, but then they surprise you. They find their own ways to surprise you. So I would really encourage you to keep trying with the changes you want to make. So with the rules, for instance, right? You told me they were not really used to being asked to make their own rules, but they still made some rules, right? And they worked better or worse. But then after a week, you can say, okay, how have these rules been working? And again, think together, is this working? Maybe, maybe not. How could we make them work better? So maybe by the first time you do this or the second time you do this, you have some rules that are not great, but they made them and they are going to try to follow them and they understand why those rules are in place. But if you do this process 10 times, you know, by the end of the trimester, for example, they might have a very good set of rules that they made and they understand. Right? But it's important to keep revising them. So no rule is set in stone, right? And okay, this is how it goes and there's no way to change it. No, that's not useful for no one in the world ever. But for kids especially, right? It's very important they can rethink about the rules they made. And for instance, I remember also you said there was a rule about respecting other people, right? So respecting other people is a great rule, but do you think it's a good rule, like practically?
It's not clearly defined, so it's very also open to interpretation. It's not
exactly
respected out of it.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, I don't know how old the kids you work with are, probably different ages, but if you just said respect other people, they probably have a diffuse understanding of what respect means, right? But how do they put that in practice? So they know they have to respect people, but maybe they don't have the tools. Maybe they don't really know, at least, you know, explicitly know that respecting someone means not laughing at them when they say something they, I don't know, they're trying to express, or not making fun of their differences, right? Or stuff like that. But maybe they don't know that's what it means to respect someone else. So again, you don't have to make the rules for them. They have to make them, but you can guide them, right? And you can ask them, okay, yeah, this is great. How do we do this? Right? So it's very important that the rules you get to are specific enough that they understand what to do, right? And this is very important. They have to know what to do, not what not to do, ideally. So they have to be written in positive, right? What does it mean to respect someone? Let them speak when they're speaking instead of not interrupting them, you know? That helps. It simplifies the process. So again, rules are not just rules. They should be accompanied with, okay, what does it mean to follow them, right? How can I do it? And specific steps. Because so, like, very often we just assume we know how to do things. And even for us, we are tricked by that. And then we can make those mistakes as well. Yeah, sure, I know the rule, but I'm not following it because I don't really know how. That happens to everyone, right? So I think that's also a very important thing we can think about. Okay, there's a whole section of techniques and examples to, like, cooperative learning techniques and sessions, but I don't know if we should get into that now. I don't know if you have other questions or things you would like to talk about surrounding this.
What is the question, sorry?
If you have questions or specific topics around this that you would like to go deeper into.
Say one.
For me, it's very interesting, like looking at this and then applying it on the way of working in a group as a DNS team, because in a sense, these things apply to us, but we're also a more advanced version of this working in a group, because we're working in a group for 4 years. And then we're also developing our rules and kind of expectations or ways of how we do things or how we don't, how we should communicate and all this stuff, and it builds up on top of each other. So then it creates kind of a team or group culture. And sometimes I'm just reflecting, because I'm also with another DNS team, how sometimes the rules that are created can also be like as a demand that is in a way detrimental to the group, because it's a way of a person expressing their frustration at something that they don't want to maybe clearly express. Maybe I have a problem with this person, and when they do that, but instead I say, I think we should all do this, just to get around that person. Yeah, not particularly something to say, just on applying it also that we can also, the DNS team, look at the way how we can improve or use these tools on our working as a group.
You know, it could also be a great start, because if you start using them among yourselves, you're going to get a deeper feel of how they work, right? And maybe then it's easier for you to go through that same process with kids, right? So it could be a very good idea to just start among yourselves. That's totally fine, of course. But some parts of this don't really apply to you, because you don't need specific parts of this for what you're doing, but other parts are very useful, like these rule setting, right? Self-evaluation and all that, I think can be really good. So yeah, getting into techniques, that can be very long. I don't know how much I want to get into that now, because I think these core concepts are very good. We could maybe talk about, one of my favorite subjects is evaluation as a concept, right? Everything surrounding evaluation in all its forms is something I'm really interested in. I'm curious to know what you think about evaluation. Or maybe how do you evaluate things at DNS, for instance, or yourselves? Can you tell me a bit about how that works?
Well, in the school, I would say that I've been always against this evaluation thing, but I just realized how much is needed when you don't have a grip on anything else over someone. And really, I need to give up this idea of not having a system of I punish you because you're doing wrong. But I really struggle to find an alternative with certain students. So evaluation is, even because in the school where I am, there is a big lot. Like they don't even care much about the single evaluation of a task, but more about the fact that they won't pass the final exam. You know? So at least you can say, look, you won't pass the exam, so you make them make the task. But yeah, it's a bit still sad that it needs to be like this. In DNS, the evaluation more related to the fact of achievement of goals.
I think what we call evaluation is reflection. Yeah, we've never put really evaluation at the, let's evaluate how we had this group dynamic. Just let's reflect. At the same time.
I mean, if I need to think like the outcome of a meeting or the outcome of a period, I evaluate it according to how much we went closer to the final goal that we set at the beginning. That's my evaluation.
Mm-hmm. So here there's probably a conceptual confusion, right? And it's totally understandable, because most of your life, what evaluation was okay, I do an exam and I get a grade. Right? That's the evaluation we've all known. But evaluation in itself is incredibly more, incredibly bigger and more important as well, because, you know, getting a grade after an exam doesn't do a lot for you, and usually does more bad than good. I don't know if that's true in your experience. It definitely is true in my experience. But evaluation goes so much further than that. Like all of you, every day of your life, are doing evaluation. Like that's a process that's almost permanent in our minds, because you're always evaluating how well a specific thing worked. When you cook something and you taste it afterwards, you're evaluating how well you did, right? You're not giving yourself a grade, maybe, or punishing you, right? But you're thinking about, okay, how does this taste? What did I do? Did it work well? What could I do to improve it, right? So all this kind of reflection about what you have done is evaluation. And evaluation is fundamental to learning. Right? You cannot learn without evaluation. I don't know if that's clear, right? But it's impossible to learn without evaluation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, because So there's many ways of thinking about learning. Like there's many models, but I think the simplest one would be a simple input and output model. Okay, so whenever you learn something, there's an input, right? There's new information, whatever it is, there's new information that comes into you. And then your brain takes that information and makes something with it, right? An output. And then that output is evaluated by your brain, right? You say, okay, how did I do? How did it work? Do I like what I made? And that output goes back as an input, right? It's new information that allows you to revise what you thought and make a different output. So it's a cycle, a constant cycle that only works thanks to evaluation. So I just want to make that clear because evaluation is fundamental. Now, a very different thing is grading. Right? So I think it's very important that we distinguish those words. Even though many people you will work with will think evaluation and grading are the same, I think at least for yourselves, right, it's important to understand the conceptual difference between the psychological process of evaluation, which is fundamental, and we couldn't live without it, and grading, which is just assigning a grade depending on how well someone did on a test. Right, so I think those are very different things. And you will find that people that are very good at evaluating themselves are incredible learners. Like it's not a secondary process that, well, it's not that important. It's super, super important. But why do we not think about evaluation generally when we learn? Why do you think that is? Like as a learning mechanism.
Well, one thing is that probably it's usually associated with grading, so as something negative in our minds since a very young age.
I would also associate it to the fear of making mistakes, and if we learn that making mistakes is a negative thing, then you don't want to evaluate to realize you made a mistake.
Yeah, exactly. Not only do you not want to evaluate, you don't want to do anything, because if you do something, you're at risk of making a mistake. So you just don't risk it. So why do we have students that don't think when you ask them? Because if they do, they can get it wrong. So they learn that not thinking is a better option. So I mean, I'm very mad at the educational system for this, for just literally killing our brains. But yeah, I've always had this idea, right? The educational system has kidnapped our ability to evaluate ourselves and others even, but especially ourselves. Because when in school are you ever asked or taught to evaluate your own work? But not just to give you a grade, because some teachers have tried that and they told me, okay, grade yourself. No, that's terrible. That's making the same mistake, right? The system is making if you grade yourself. Like, at least if you only grade yourself, because there's some situations in which that could make sense, okay? But as a general rule, you should evaluate yourself to understand what went wrong, try to make it better, propose solutions to the problems, right? And you all know, of course, why that's important, right? We need that for everything.
But
So,
can it be that grading it's not doesn't have to be demonized so much and can be integrated in the evaluation part? Like I have done, I have achieved the goal. I know what I've been doing good and what I've been doing wrong. Generally, I can say that from 1 to 10, I give myself a 7, just then to conclude on my evaluation, or to have it more settled in an indication system.
yes, it can be useful, but I would reserve that to if a student wants to do that, right? To just have an idea of how they're doing, sure. But not, ideally, I would not make that the compulsory way of evaluating everything, right? It would be like, oh, I just want to see how I'm doing. Then you take a test and okay, 7, well, I could do better. But that just gives you an idea of how you're doing. But as you know, 3 students with the same grade can be very different students, can have very different conceptions and misconceptions of the things that they're learning, right? So 2 students with the same grade can be extremely different. And their understanding of the things in the test can be extremely different. So a grade, and I also think we want grades to get an idea of how we're doing because we've been used to grades. right? We have seen them all our lives, so we think they have this huge power, right? And not only power in our lives and everything, but they mean something, right? If you have a 7, you might think, oh, I'm doing great. Does it really mean that? I'm not so sure. Because a 7 can be attained in so many different ways that what does it mean? You can't, if I know someone and he tells me, oh, I have an average of 7 in math. Okay, so what do I know about this person?
Yeah, no, I was saying that by itself, it doesn't make sense giving a grade. I was just saying to begin more visual in a scale, like we use scales, we use indicators to make ourselves find a position in between the lowest, like the 0 and the maximum we can reach. So like I'm thinking like how to not just eliminate the grading system, but to make it as because I see the value to see where I am, you know, like of course understanding what is my situation and what was the process and what I've been doing well and wrong, but even to say that at the end of all, according to this, I reached more than half of what I could have done, you know, like for me it's visual and doesn't have to judge me, doesn't have to identify me, but it's used as a, you know, to understand where I am. It's kind of, I'm speeding up with the car anyway, like you can tell me that you're going 100 kilometers an hour, but if I don't have a referral system where I see where the indicator is going, that I'm more than half, like I'm too far away or too close to 0, like then it shows me that I'm going fast or I'm going slow.
But then maybe could you now bring some examples that are still evaluating and they're still indicators, but then they are not the test or not this great?
Yeah, so I was thinking about that. Like, let me give you well, I was trying to give you an example, but I can't share my screen apparently.
Oh, no.
I have to be allowed by Rocco, I think.
For Rocco?
How does it work?
You have to give me permission to share my screen.
I give you permission.
Yeah, thanks.
Right click on his name. Try to right click on his name and the participant. Daniel. More give permission.
Are you guys okay? I see you look like very, very tired.
Yeah? Yeah. No, that's how we look like when we are listening.
Daniel, do you have an idea how to do this?
No, I don't use Zoom, so I'm not really sure how to do that.
Yeah, it's coming to the rescue.
Okay, so while we try to figure this out, I can try to explain what I wanted to show you. Because drawing it would have been easier, right? But let's try to explain. So you could still use your numeric values, right? Rocco, I used to demonize numeric values. Now I think they can be used, but you have to be very careful how you use them. That's for sure. Because we have also been used to use these numeric values as comparison values, right? So we compare ourselves to other people, which makes sense depending on what you want to do. But I think the most important comparison is to yourself and to your own goals. And that's something it doesn't do that well. So I would propose as an alternative, for example. Can you give me an example of something you're teaching lately, right? A concept, one subject you're teaching.
English? Like a topic within the subject or the subject?
Yes. Yes, a topic within the subject.
Canada and the Arctic.
What?
Canada and the Arctics.
Yeah.
Canada and the Arctics. Okay. Well, it's not my expertise, but let's go with that. So if you're teaching, right, Canada and the Arctics, instead of thinking up of tests and things to evaluate, to give a grade to students, right, to how they're doing, let's think about, okay, what do I want the students to learn in this subject, right? So can you tell me a few things you would want them to learn? What are the important things by the end of the subject? What do you want them to know?
According to the curricula, not that doesn't concern any of my thoughts, idea. It's about getting to know the Arctic and climate change and consequences, and expanding the vocabulary and some other bullshit like it.
Okay, so what you could do, for instance, right? A visual way of understanding this would be that you could even do this with the kids. It would probably be fun, right? You take the main aspects. So here, climate change, the Arctic, and Canada, let's just say, okay, those are the three main aspects. And then you think of how those aspects are subdivided, right? What components are inside every one of those big concepts, right? So about climate change, what do you need to know about climate change? You need this. Okay, so you make a list of all the things you want your students to learn, so that by the end of the semester or whatever, you can evaluate whether they have learned it or not and what to do about it. And then once the student learns something and you know, okay, he knows this, okay, he knows this aspect, you can fill up a part of a bottle, for instance, right? Imagine you have a bottle for every one of the main concepts, and every time he learns 1/10 of the concept, you can put 1/10 of the sand in the bottle, for instance, right? That's probably something kids will like. And as you make sure they learn new concepts, okay, when they come with the concept, you say, okay, you understand this now. You keep filling up the bottle. So the goal is not getting a higher or lower grade, is getting to the objective of understanding the things I have to understand. I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but do you kind of understand how that's a different focus?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're one thing I really dislike about regular grading and education is that you have to do better than the middle point, right? So if you get a 5 out of 10, that's enough. Okay, that's it. I did it. Some people will want more. Some people will not really want that much more. But your goal is to get to the 5 or to do better than someone else. But if you use another system, right, where the objective is, okay, I want to learn all of these things. The goal is to learn all of those things, not to do better than someone else or worse than someone else. Like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
But filling the bottle will not lead to the same result.
I don't
My
think
bottle is
so.
empty, and, like my bottle is less full than yours.
Well, but
So,
then let's help you finish filling the bottle. Because a grade, you usually give a grade and that grade stays there, right? Like he got a 7 in his first test and he got a 5 in the second. And then you do the average and the average is a 6. But if you keep filling up the bottle as they learn, everyone can end up with a full bottle, no matter how long they took to do that, right? You could also just do a list on a paper, right? These are all the objectives and you do a check every time something is learned, understood. And so the objective is not to do better than someone, to do worse, to do at least as good. It's just, okay, let's go through the whole list. I want to be able to do everything here. And again, if you have a bad performance in a test, if you start the year, for example, right, you get a 5 and then you get a 5, but then you suddenly start understanding everything. And at the end of the semester, you get a 9, right? So you actually learned by the end of the semester, right? And you did really good, but you get a 6 point something. Why? You have learned. You just did worse at the beginning because you actually didn't know the things you had to know. And that usually happens when you learn, right? So I think it's a better approach that instead of giving a grade every time that indicates how you did there, you can slowly complete the process. So you can do that with grades if, for example, they don't count. Right? You give a grade as an indication, but then it doesn't count. So if you get a 5 at the first test, it's just telling you, okay, you need to learn more, but it doesn't count until the last test, maybe. Although that's still a bit problematic, because if you do bad at the last test because of a random thing, right? There's just a question that confused you, or you weren't feeling so good and you do bad, oh, that kind of ruins it, right? So I see a lot of advantages of changing the focus in this way, but I know it's not very easy because not many schools and systems allow this. But I think this is a good ideal to work towards, like this kind of evaluation.
But then I really think, like, how can, like, society has been based on this for until now, and it is wrong in many aspects. But how can I evaluate? Like, not I need to know if you are competent as a doctor to save my life, or if you are not. Like, if we don't have any system to evaluate students, how then when we're talking about jobs, we can say you are able to do something and you not.
But you are able to do that with this. Like, for instance, if this was a university setting, right? And one of the objectives was performing surgery. If you're not able to do that, you don't fill up the bottle and you can't get your degree. That's it.
Yeah.
But you don't get a grade, you don't get, no. You have to work until you're able to do that thing.
And even the grades, they don't assess it like perfect.
Exactly.
If you have doctor worksheet and cut the proposal.
But then I know it, like, if, for example, like, let's suppose that now, like, the final grade in medicine like, it's the real evaluation for a good or a medium or for a low doctor, which anyway, you're talking about somebody that graduated and is a doctor. So let's suppose that grade is the amount of knowledge that person has according to what he's doing. Like, I can choose which one of these people will operate on me, or like I can, if I am an hospital, I can hire the one that is able to do bigger things than, better things than somebody that is doing less. But they are anyway doctors. But still, like, I have a way to define which one is the best.
Well, yes, but that's another aspect. There you're actually looking for competition. There you actually want to know which one is the best. And grading, even if it's not great, I think is one of the best tools we have to do this. It's very, like, it makes a lot of mistakes, but we don't have a lot of better things, right? But that's because you're looking for competition. You're looking to compare different people. But with students in school, you don't need to compare them. You just want them to learn. So if they learn everything they have to learn, who cares if one does it faster than the other? Did they all learn what you wanted them to learn? Yeah, that's amazing, right? Why do they need to compare themselves to each other and see, I have a higher grade? So I think for learning, it's a lot more important to figure, like, to think about things like this. Then if you want to compare people, of course, grading is a lot easier and probably better. But you have to know why you're using every tool, right? Why are you evaluating students? To help them learn and to see how they're learning? Okay, then grading is maybe not the greatest option. Are you trying to determine which is the best student? Then maybe yes, right? It's different approaches. But every tool has a purpose, right?
Yeah, definitely. For sure. I know the point was just like, maybe we should just find define where we use this system and where we take it away.
Well, that's something you will have to think about. But yeah, I think we're running out of time here. I also have to go now. But this was very nice. I was very happy to do this. And,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When's the next one?
I don't know, but I'll see you in May anyway.
Okay, see you in May.
And then still in teaching practice.
I knew it's done really want to soon.
Bye-bye, guys. It was a pleasure.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye, Daniel.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.